I'm Connor Old, and welcome to the final episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. We have counted down to the Oscars since October, giving my predictions every single week, talking about the awards season, and now we're finally here. We've had the Oscars, and we have all the winners, and we can see how we've been doing based on all of our thinking throughout these past few months here on the 8th season of Old Oscar Countdown. So what I want to do with this video is just discuss the show, some of the surprises, and give some final takeaways from the award season, from Oscar season, to remember for next year. And stay tuned to the end of this video where I'm going to be giving you an understanding of what I'm going to be doing next week and in this Oscar off season, the new series that I'm going to be launching. I'm very excited for that, so do stick around till the end. So in the first part of this video, I actually want to talk about the show. And I know we always talk about what's going to win and the predictions, and that's the main thing that we focus on. But ultimately, we watch the show, and it can be really bad, as we've had in recent years. But I thought this one was really excellent, and I definitely wanted to highlight the benefits of the show and how much I ultimately did enjoy just the telecast. I thought Jimmy Kimmel wasn't too controversial, had a couple of good jabs at Robert De Niro or even Robert Downey Jr., and it wasn't super laugh out loud funny, but I thought that his fourth time hosting the show, he had a real confidence, a real ease. You definitely see the necessary need for a host because of how comfortable he was up there and how he was able to move things along and transition from one joke to the next or one category to the next. He's very good at it, and you can tell that he's had quite a bit of award show experience at this point. If anything, I actually want to celebrate the producers of the show. I thought they did an excellent job at the other sort of non-host bits. I thought the John Cena naked bit was very funny. I thought Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito doing their Batman bit was also humorous and fun for everybody while still keeping it kind of lighthearted. And then even certain choices like the introduction of having all of the actors, past winners, reward the new actor winner, kind of welcoming them to the club. If it was long, yes, but if anything, just the fact that we had all the different people there up on stage and they could shake their hands as they go onto stage, I thought that was a great visual and a great introduction to something we used to have years ago. And then even as something as small as Steven Spielberg rewarding Christopher Nolan for Best Director, kind of symbolically, I think, representing the king of Hollywood, Steven Spielberg, finally kind of passing that on to the next generation in Christopher Nolan. I thought that was a great moment. And then, of course, the I'm Just Ken number I thought was the best song performance since Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga 5 years ago for A Star Is Born. Maybe one of the best song moments of Oscar history of all time. Ryan Gosling totally committed to that. Just so much fun and energy, and shows that you can have kind of the heart in some moments, like Jimmy Kimmel in his speech kind of talking about the Teamsters and the sport that they gave when the writers and actors went on strike. So you have a heartwarming moment like that, but then you can also have the silliness of something like John Cena being naked, or I'm Just Ken singing and having fun with that song. So overall, I thought it was a well-paced show, well-produced show, some good funny bits, nothing too crazy or controversial, not too many bits falling completely flat, and if they did, they kind of moved on from it, and they weren't too long. So I do want to give some shout outs to the overall show. I thought it was well produced and one of the better ones in recent years. Now, just briefly going over some of the surprises and maybe explaining why that happened. The big one, I guess, of Emma Stone, not necessarily a surprise in that it was pretty even odds with her and Lily Gladstone at the betting odds in the sites, although I did end up predicting Lily Gladstone, and it was a huge moment, I think, for Emma Stone. And just as an Oscar historian and someone who loves the Oscars, I was sort of arguing why I thought Gladstone would win was because Emma Stone had just recently won for La La Land, and they pretty much never like to give lead actresses multiple awards in such recent succession. And when they do, Jodie Foster, Hilary Swank, Frances McDormand, the second time they win, it's for a Best Picture winner. And so the fact that Emma Stone won for Poor Things here pretty recently after just winning for La La Land in 2016, despite only being 35, in a non-Best Picture winner, I think is a huge support and sign of support for someone like Emma Stone. Even though we know Emma Stone even before she won this award, she would be someone that would last for another 20 more years, delivering great performances. She seems like that kind of an actress. And now with that second Oscar, it puts her of the likes of a Jodie Foster or a Katharine Hepburn or a Cate Blanchett in that kind of legendary status of someone that we expect to be here for a long time. It was a very sort of genuine and moving speech, so I was glad to see Emma Stone win, and just from an Oscar perspective, a history perspective, it really does put her in another class. And then some other surprises. Best Sound, I think, was the biggest surprise on the night. I really thought Oppenheimer was going to win just because it was so similar to past other winners like Dune or Dunkirk. So the fact that the Zone of Interest did win, I think, indicates the international support of the Academy really showing up. But then also I give them a lot of credit because it is a pretty inspired choice. It's not the most obvious pick. It's not the loudest film like many sound winners are. So I will give some credit to the Academy for going kind of off the beaten path, but giving a well-deserved winner in the Zone of Interest here, Best Sound. Then Best Animated Feature, I was surprised to see The Boy and the Heron win. I thought it was too weird of a movie, but I am glad to see Hayao Miyazaki win another Oscar, even if this wasn't my favorite of his films, and shows that the Academy is becoming a little bit more international, a little bit more weirder. Movies like Drive My Car, or even something like The Zone of Interest, wouldn't have even been considered in recent years, and now those are Oscar movies, and now we're seeing that even in the animated feature side, where in the past they used to be what the major kind of kids movies, Disney, Pixar, and now we're getting more international films being represented, like Robot Dreams, or even the win here for The Boy and the Heron. So I was surprised to see that, but a glad surprise in many ways. And then I guess maybe makeup and costumes going to Poor Things was a little bit of a surprise, but they clearly liked that movie quite a bit, the Academy did. And then Best Visual Effects, I correctly predicted Godzilla -1, but I do think that was still a bit of a surprise because that category was so kind of unpredictable going into the night, kind of showcasing that the movie that is the most well-liked usually ends up winning. And speaking of which, now into this part of the video, I just want to talk about kind of the three main takeaways that I want to take away from this show. Because sometimes we do all this work with the Oscars, we get the results of the winners, and then we immediately forget them for the next year. So I do want to, while things are fresh, come up with some takeaways that we can hopefully remember for next year. And that first one is that when you're unsure about what movie you're going to predict, even in the technical categories, go for the movie that is the most well-liked by the Academy. That seemed to be a common thread here, whether there be Poor Things beating out Maestro in makeup, or even someone like Emma Stone winning in Best Actress over Lily Gladstone. When it's a close race like that, Emma Stone wins BAFTA, Lily Gladstone wins SAG. At the end of the day, Killers of the Flower Moon disappointed when it came to the Academy nominations, and Poor Things did as expected or even better than expected in terms of its nominations. So when it's kind of a close race like that, kind of a toss-up, they went to the movie that's more well-liked. Even in something like makeup, they don't go with Maestro. In costumes, they don't go with Barbie. Even in visual effects, Godzilla -1 wasn't a heavily nominated film, but it was the most critically well-acclaimed and well-appreciated, more so than The Creator, more so than a movie like the Napoleon, because many of these Oscar voters are ultimately just fans of their movies, so they're going to vote for the movie that they like. Even something like Oppenheimer winning 7 Oscars, I think, is indicative of them really just liking certain movies and wanting to reward them over and over again. Then the second takeaway of the show that I think is important is that the international branch of the Academy is significant and their influence is clear. I think this year in particular, we're really seeing that in some of the technical categories as well, whether that be the Zone of Interest winning in sound, or The Boy and the Heron winning for Best Animated Feature, or even in some of the costume and makeup categories, it's the international films, Poor Things, The Zone of Interest, even something like Anatomy of a Fall winning in screenplay, beating out kind of the more traditional Academy, biopics in Maestro, the holdovers, dramedies, losing in something like Best Original Screenplay. We are seeing the Academy become more international, and as a result, I think become a little bit more weirder, rewarding a little bit more stranger films, foreign films in many respects, and that the classic kind of Oscar baity type movies aren't getting nominated, and if they are kind of getting nominated, they're weirder, like a movie like Maestro, and even still, because it's almost so traditional in a way, they're still going to go with an even stranger movie like Poor Things. I think that's important to keep in mind, that the international branch of the Academy, whether it be in the director's branch, which we've seen in recent years, but even in some of these technical categories, a movie like All Quiet on the Western Front last year doing very well, winning production design, things like that, that is a significant part of the Academy rather than even some of the other precursors that I think it is important to note. And then the third takeaway that I want to remind us all is that the Oscars are still unpredictable as ever. I hear it every single year. Oh, the Oscars have become boring. We know what's going to win. The betting markets and the precursors and sites like Gold Derby, they tell us what's going to win every year. And then every year, we still get major surprises. There was 6 or 7 categories that weren't the favorite on Gold Derby or betting sites. There are movies that didn't win precursors that surprised here. It's important to remember the reason why we follow the Oscars, and the reason why I do this show is because it's unpredictable, because the Oscars like to do their own thing. And for as much research as I can do, and we all do as Oscar lovers, sometimes it's important to note that we will see surprises, that there will be surprises, and to keep that in mind when making our predictions. And then also as a reminder of why we follow this so closely, because it's fun to see movies we like be rewarded, and artists that we respect finally get rewarded, and to see their joy in their faces, and that's really rewarding too. But also it's fun to predict what's going to happen, because precisely we don't know what's going to win. Yeah, we knew Oppenheimer was going to win for Best Picture, but still major categories like Best Actress, we still didn't know going into Oscar night, and then we still have other surprises in some of the technical categories too. Just based on the fact that this year, the BAFTAs were very accurate at predicting the Oscars, and last year, the BAFTAs were terrible at predicting the Oscars. Just that fact alone indicates that there's so much unpredictability every year with the Oscars that we can't ultimately predict what they're going to do. They're their own kind of a group, and they like to go into weird different directions too, and that's what makes it so fun, is that we don't know. And we can debate and talk and discuss about some of these great movies and whether or not they're going to get rewarded or not. And that's why I love doing these videos and talking about the Oscars with you. So what's next? Well, like every single year, we don't stop making videos. Every week, I still provide some new entertainment and piece of content for you to enjoy. In recent years, in the kind of Oscar off-season, I've tried to keep it Oscar relevant. Last off-season, I tier ranked some of the Best Picture winners, Best Acting winners, what have you. But this year I wanted to do something a little bit different and just talk about movies in general, not necessarily Oscar-specific ones, but more so related to Asian cinema. And the series that I'm going to be launching starting next week, so subscribe and don't go anywhere, we'll be back next week, is called More Than Kurosawa. And it's going to be a deep dive into Asian film, reviewing a different Asian film every single week by a different director, with the kind of thesis of what Bong Joon-ho said in his guest Golden Globes speech, which is that if you can overcome the 1-inch barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to a world of great cinema. And that's kind of what I want to do. And I call it More Than Kurosawa because I think for a lot of us, we're introduced to Akira Kurosawa at the beginning of film school, and then that's kind of it. And then that's the door that's open for you for the introduction of Asian cinema. But for so many of us, we kind of leave it at that. Or maybe we see a couple Bong Joon-ho movies or Park Chan-wook movies, kind of the modern day masters of their time, but we don't do a deep dive into another culture. We're still focused mostly on American movies, and I know I'm guilty of that. So I want to use this series as a chance to watch more Asian movies, to discover new films, but then also to celebrate the ones that I'm already very passionate about. So a new film reviewed every single week, talking about a new director every single week. So we're not going to do 3 Bong Joon-ho movies. We're going to try to be a little bit more niche than that, covering 10 different Asian countries in terms of where the cinema is from, a bunch of different genres, a bunch of different decades. I'm going to go all the way back to the 40s and 50s, but then also the 70s, 80s, 90s, like I said, of all different cultures throughout, mostly East Asia. That will be the focus of the series, but as we go forward, I will be open to suggestions, particularly as the series develops. So I appreciate it if you were to stick around and give the new series a shot, but of course I know if you're an Oscar fan, that may not be right up your alley. And if that's the case, no problem whatsoever. Come back next year at the start of Oscar season. You can expect me here breaking down the Oscars like I have for the past 8 years. We'll start up for the 9th season of Old Oscar Countdown, and that will be a lot of fun. So just as a final thank you for everyone that's been watching the videos and commenting down below their thoughts, I really do love what we've created here. A great film-loving, Oscar-loving community here in the comments. I appreciate you liking the videos and subscribing to the channel and commenting and watching the videos. It really does make my goal come true and my dream come true of creating this great piece of the internet for Oscar lovers. And if you're just a movie lover in general and maybe want to learn a little bit more about Asian cinema, stick around to my weekly series, More Than Kurosawa, in the coming weeks. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned to next week for the start of a brand new series that I'm very excited about. But that's it. Until next time, stay tuned.